Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Today we're going to be starting the next set in our FutureFight series, which is going to be V-BT04 Vilus Deleters, I believe. If I misquote that, I'm sorry. I didn't look up the actual set name. I just think it's Vilus Deleters. But anyways, we're going to be doing the Deleter deck as the first deck out of there because it's in the name, right? We got to do that one first. So we're going to be doing the Deleter deck today. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Before we get started, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below and click the bell button so that you can get notified whenever a video goes live. Be sure to like the video, give a thumbs up if you like the video. Comment down below letting me know what you think of the video and what you would like to see more of in the future. Really helps me know what you guys want, and that way I can kind of lean towards making more of those videos or something like that. Also, be sure to check out the Patreon down below if you want to support the channel in that way as well. All the details are down below in the description. And check out our sponsor, Dabbers Cards and Games. It's a local card shop in Georgia. They have a lot of cool cards, merchandise, video games, and a lot of stuff to offer. If you're ever swinging by in Georgia, I would suggest giving them a look. And if you live in Georgia, you already probably know about them and buy from them anyways. So if you don't live in Georgia, the link is down below for their online store so that you can buy cards from them via online. But yeah, let's get right into the video. So like I said, we're going to be talking about Link Joker today. So we're going to load up our V-BT04 Link Joker deck. No G-Zone because standard. And then I guess let's talk about it a little bit. For those of you guys who are new to the game, or you only played or you only started playing in V series, I guess I'm going to explain a couple things about the Link Joker deck to you guys because you guys haven't seen Link Joker. It's the first time that it's been introduced in standard. So first of all, Link Joker is a force clan, so really helps you bolster your numbers by putting force markers on your Vanguard and Rearguard circles, especially when paired with the fact that this is Deleters. So Deleters has a mechanic called Delete, where basically their grade 3s will delete your Vanguard, and basically what that means is that your Vanguard gets flipped upside down. You lose everything related to the card except for that card's name, clan, and race, I believe. So it keeps the name and it also loses its power. So it goes down to 0 power, which means that from a defensive standpoint, you're now guarding from 0 power instead of 13k playing a force deck, or 12k playing a excel or a protect deck. So it's very, very important, especially when we're forced and we're bolstering our numbers, to hit your opponent for really, really big, and they have to drop more shield. It's basically they have to drop, I believe it's 15k more shield for every attack that you attack them with because of that. So Delete is a really cool mechanic. But let's get right into the deck list. So we have 4 Waving Deleter Grail. This is our secondary ride, what we want to ride second as our second grade 3 and for the rest of the game after that. It has a Vanguard skill that says your opponent's rearguards cannot move to other rearguard circles, so it actually takes away a game mechanic from them, which is kind of crazy. So if your opponent plays a back row and you ride this card, and basically they bind your cards as well, so if they ride this card and they use this card and another card to bind your front row units, then their back row units, if they don't have attackers in their hand to play down, they literally cannot just move their back row units to the front row and make use of what little they have on board. This card prevents that completely. Its secondary ability is when it's placed on Vanguard Circle, Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and bind it face down. And then if you rode this from a grade 3, which means if you are already on grade 3 and you're riding this card, then you delete your opponent's Vanguard and this unit gets +1 critical until the end of the turn. And also when your Vanguard is deleted, it is deleted until the end of the opponent's next turn. So basically, if we're playing each other and I delete your Vanguard, then your Vanguard only gets undeleted on your turn if you choose to ride number 1, And if you don't ride, then your Vanguard's just going to stay deleted during your turn, which means that it will stay 0 power and it will stay not having an ability. So a lot of times, especially against the leaders, like, it's good to have another grade 3 to ride, because if you don't, it can get really bad for you. Moving on to our next grade 3, we have 4 Docking Deleter Grand. This is our first ideal ride of the deck. It's okay in my opinion. Obviously not as good as the first one. That's just kind of boss Soul Blast, but its delete ability is kind of boss 2, but it is an activation during the main phase, so you can set up, do whatever you need to do, and then do it. So at Vanguard Circle, counter boss 2, delete your opponent's Vanguard. That's all the first skill does. Then the second skill is when it's on Vanguard Circle and its attack hits a Vanguard, and then you Soul Blast one, and you can choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bind it. So basically, more of the bind mechanics. Not much to say there. This card's pretty simple. Moving on to our grade 2s, we have 4 Swift Deleter Gaily. This is probably our best grade 2, low key. It's very similar to Berserk Dragon and Kagero in my opinion, but it says first ability is on rearguard circle when it's placed. If you have more rear guards than your opponent, then this unit gets plus 4,000, so it can become a 14k, which is really cool when you're like boosting with 7ks or 8ks. Boosting with a 7k makes for a 21k column on that, and then boosting with an 8k makes it a 22k column, which is a great number on Excel and Protect decks. But however, when you are deleting them, you only care about making the regular numbers like multiples of 5, because they'll be at 0k power, and we guard in multiples of 5 in this game. So basically, if you hit 21, then that's a really good number to hit on your opponent, because they're going to be deleted most likely by your skills. Then it has a Vanguard rearguard ability. On the second part of the ability, it says when its attack hits a Vanguard, Soul Blast one, and choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bind it face down. And if you cannot bind, draw a card. So what it means by if you cannot bind is if they do not have a rear guard. So a lot of times, if you go first and you ride, then your opponent's just going to ride to grade 1 and attack you. And then you ride to grade 2 and you swing with this card, and they're probably going to take it. And what this means is that if they have a rear guard, that's good for you because you get to bind it. And if they don't have a rear guard, you get to draw a card. So either way, it's really, really good to use the ability. Moving on to our next grade 2, we have 3 Lie Down Deleter Given. So we only run 3 Given because its skill is like, we don't use it that often in Standard. I actually believe that like using this skill in Standard could lose you the game in a lot of different ways if you don't know what you're doing when you're just using it like willy-nilly. So Lie Down Deleter, a given skill, is good, but you need to be very careful about when you use it. But the ability is when it's on the rearguard circle at the end of the battle that it attacked, if your opponent's Vanguard is deleted, then you can choose between 6 rear guards and both rear guards and cards from your hand, totaling of 6, and then stand your Vanguard and it gets -1 drive until the end of the turn. So basically, a couple things about this card that people have misconceptions about. Given has to be the one to attack. So this is not at the end of Vanguard attack. I know it's worded kind of weird when it says at the end of the battle that it attacked. The it that the skill is referring to is given, not your Vanguard. I've had to explain that to a lot of people, so just clear the air with that. And then also, when you're getting rid of 6 cards, you can, if you have like a full board, like you have a Vanguard and 5 rear guards, you can get rid of all 5 of your rear guards and 1 card from your hand, or like 3 rear guards and 3 cards from your hand, as long as they total 6. So it can be like 5 from the board, 1 from hand, 4 from the board, 2 from hand, 3 from the board, 3 from hand, etc., vice versa. So that's why you really want to be careful when you use this card, because you're losing 6 cards to get 1 dry check. So if you think about it, you go through your turn, you draw a card, right? That adds 1 to your hand. Then you do your twin drive, that's 2 more cards, and then you lose 6 cards. So this is -3 now, and then you dry check 1. So it ends up being a -2 with all of the cards that you've gained that turn. So it is a minus, so only use it if you're sure that you can kill your opponent or put them in a place where they won't be able to recover easily at all. Moving on to our next grade 2s, they're kind of a pair. Hailing Deleter Alba and Hailing Deleter Elro. They kind of work based off of each other. I'll explain how. Alba skill says during the battle that it attacked a Vanguard if you have an Elro in your rearguard circle against 4,000. And then Elro's first ability is when it hits a Vanguard. If you have an Alba on your rearguard circle, counterblast 1, and you choose one of your opponent's rearguards and bind it. So Elro has an on hit when Alba's on the board, and Alba gains power when Elro's on the board. So they're pretty cool together. And then they both have drop zone abilities, allowing themselves to call themselves when the other one is present. So if you have when you're hailing Deleter Elro is placed on rearguard circle, you can Soul Blast 1 and call this card to rearguard. So you Soul Blast to call Alba, and then you Counterblast to call Elro. So whether these units get retired or not, you can always bring them back by just playing down another one of them on the board. So that's pretty cool. Then moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Opener of Dark Gates. Opener of Dark Gates is such a really good card. When placed on rearguard circle, if your opponent has 2 or less rearguards, you can Soul Blast 1, and then look at the top 2 cards from your deck, call up to 1 card with a grade less than or equal to your opponent's Vanguard from among them to your rearguard circle, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So Opener of Dark Gates is really, really good. Obviously, it works based off of your opponent's Vanguard instead of your own, which is something that I kind of just realized, actually. But it's still really, really good. Allows you to just Soul Blast and call a free card. Like, sometimes if you don't have attackers, and you have attackers in the top 2 cards of your deck, then you can just call it. It's pretty much free. Soul Blasts are not that heavy in this deck. So just very, very good card all around. Then we have 4 Embro Deleter Jarga. So what Jarga does is when it's placed on rearguard circle, you can counterblast 1 and retire another rearguard to bind all of your opponent's rearguards in the same column. So I would say only use this if your opponent has a full column setup, like a attacker and a booster, because it's not really worth it to just use it on 1 card. You don't get the full value out of it. You're basically just doing a 1-for-1 exchange with your opponent. But what you want to do is make your opponent lose 2 cards and you lose 1 card. So yeah. Moving on to our next grade 1, we have 3 Ill Fate Deleter Drown. So what Drown does is when it's on the rearguard circle, when your opponent's Vanguard is deleted, you can put this card into your soul and choose one of your opponent's rearguards and bind it face down. And then if your damage zone has no face-up cards, then you can countercharge 1. So this is one of those cards that helps us resource manage in our deck. A few things to mention about this card as well. The timing of this card is the exact moment when your opponent's Vanguard is deleted. Not after, not before, not at the end of the turn, not blah, 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 blah. Like, I've explained it to a bunch of people. Like, the instant that you use an ability that deletes your Vanguard, Drown has to be on the field, and that's when it would trigger, right there. And the point of that is, since you have both of your grade 3s that counterblast, and in Grayold's case, Soul Blast, to delete, then you want to have Drown on the field and then basically use your delete skill, and if you're left with no more counterblast, then you want to activate Drown right after that, and then you countercharge 1, and it also goes to the soul, which fuels additional Greyhole skill. You're going to have to unflip another one for Greyon if you want that one, but or heal off one if you want Greyon, but it does fuel another Greyhole for you to use the next turn. Moving on to our last grade 1 of the deck, we run 3 Ferment Deleter Gaian. Gaian's rearguard ability is at the end of the battle that it attacked a Vanguard. You can retire this unit and discard a card, and then you draw a card, and then choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or less rearguards and bind it. So another control card. However, this card does mention that it needs to be the one attacking. So it's basically a grade 1 attacker, and it's 8k. So you might ask, how do I, why is this good, or why is this decent, or whatever? Because of delete. If your opponent's had a 0k Vanguard and you attack them with just Gaian, they're going to have to drop 10k shield to block it, which is a regular guard. Not to mention if you have a booster behind that. So, very, very good. For our triggers and zeros, it's pretty basic. We have Sprout Deleter Lucci as our starter. Our draw starter, pretty simple. And then we have 8 crit, 4 draw, and 4 heal. 4 Asteroid Wolf, 4 Pulse Monk of the Quaking Foot. 4 Flowers and Vacuum Cosmo Wreath, and 4 Lady Healer of the Torn World. So those are our trigger lineup and the deck list. We're going to get right into the games here. So I believe I have 4 games in store for you guys today. So let's get right into that. LJ1. Alright, so game 1 we're playing against Gold Paladin. We actually go first, so we don't have to really be scared of him doing the superior ride thing on us. He also doesn't have a bowmain, so we ride Given and we attack him. He rides Vivian and calls the other grade 2 card. He tried to use the grade 2 card's ability, but I was telling him it's only when placed from hand, so he kind of ruined it and messed up game state, but it's okay. We just allowed it to happen. So we ride, we don't ride, and then we just attack, and we get a draw trigger. So yeah, he has to call a rear guard, and then we no guard his Vanguard. He gets a front trigger. We take a damage again. It's a draw trigger. So this time we ride. We counterboss 2 to delete his Vanguard, which is very important here and would be very important against this matchup naturally, because if he's on Ravenhair and he doesn't have another Ravenhair to ride, cool, then he's losing his Ravenhair ability for the turn, and I don't have to worry about it for at least 1 turn. So very, very good. And you guys see how I'm just attacking with grade 1s. I don't have to commit any more to the board than that because he was deleted. So he does have to rewrite into Sagamore. Gets another Excel circle, and sometimes your opponent doesn't want to rewrite, so he just decides to go all in here. We do 2 to pass him with a crit. He attacks for 15, then attacks, and we rewrite, we delete him. We bind one of his rear guards, and he kind of overextended with all of these cards. So he PGs, we get a crit, we put on the rear guard, and then we attack, and he just dies because he overextended. If I were him, I would have just kept all those triggers in my hand personally, but our opponent did try to overextend and just win the game earlier than they should have, and so most of the time that will result in a loss if they're not playing smart to their commitments. Opening up our card fight area again for game 2. Loading up LJ2. Alright, so this game we're playing against Dark Irregular. Dark Irregular player goes first, rides Dimension Creeper from the new set. Then our opponent Soul Charge 2 and attacks for 19. We take it easy, no guard. We have to G assist to grade 2, unfortunately, so we get rid of 2 triggers from our hand. And then we ride Given. We get a grade 1. We check a crit. Our opponent also checks a crit, so we're not able to attack into him. And then our opponent rides Zontarian, using the skill of that one grade 1 to get a grade 3. And then he suddenly puts all of the cards in his soul back to the deck. And when I asked him like what was going on, he just left the game. So I'm not sure exactly what would have happened from this point, but this is why I recorded 4 games instead of 3, because your opponents just randomly do that sometimes, like where they just do something completely illegal and then they just leave. Like, I don't know if he was rage quitting because he didn't get what he wanted or what. I have no idea what happened. So loading up Link Joker game 3. We're actually playing the Deleter Mirror Match, which is, I guess, decent. We decide to guard his first attack. He takes our grade 2 attack, so we're able to Soul Blossom draw a card. So pretty tight. And then he uses Opener skill, and then he uses a skill to give 3k to some of his units. So we get a draw trigger, we draw. He binds our card, we don't really care because, you know, he doesn't get to draw a card, so it's fine. And so then we attack for 31. When we rode our grade 3, something important to note is that if you ride Grail first, you will not get the delete off of his skill because you did not ride from a grade 3. You only get to bind a card. The bind is still worth it, but at the same time not. But yeah, as you guys can see here, he deleted me and I don't have another grade 3 to ride, so I'm forced into just attacking regular. Decided to give power to my Vanguard, and then he checked the damage trigger so my rear guard couldn't hit. He attacks me for 13. He's not able to delete me this time because he doesn't have Counterboss 2. I do check a heal trigger and heal. And then we don't have another grade 3 again, so we're attacking for 31 again. We do check no damage trigger. He checks a draw trigger again. And then he uses the counter boss to delete me this time again. We PG his Vanguard. He checks a draw trigger again. And then we just take the last damage because we don't have enough to guard. We would have been able to re-ride the next turn after that, but it doesn't really matter because in this deck, especially in the mirror match, like, you need to be able to draw 3s to ride. And that's any deck versus deleters. Like, you need to be able to have 3s to ride, or like I said, things get very bad for you because your Vanguard becomes a Vanguard with no skill, no power. Like, you need a booster, and even with a booster, you still won't hit without checking a trigger. So yeah, very, very, very bad. Anyways, we're loading up our last game. We're playing against Great Nature. So we ride, our opponent rides, draws a card, attacks us for 6, doesn't hit us. We're able to just ride and start doing shenanigans. So we play Given on the rearguard circle, we attack, he doesn't hit any triggers, so he discards the last attack. He attacks with Binoculus, luckily for him, milling a trigger. So you retire one of my cards. We had a draw trigger, luckily for us, and we use Opener of Dark Gates to call an Opener of Dark Gates, and then we call another grade 1, so that was pretty swole. Opener of Dark Gates can be used even when called from the deck, so you can gates into something else if you want, which ends up being really, really good. He rides Leopold for his first ride, so he only gets out a Binocular, or a Binoculus Tiger. He attacks Vanguard, he hits a crit trigger, which he put all of the effects to his rear guard. So we just took the rear guard attack or whatever. And then we attack with 2 crit from our rear guard, we check. We attack with 17. Then we use the skill of Given, like I was saying. So he has no rear guard and stuff, so we don't want to get put in a bad spot with Leopold, so we did put down more cards to make him guard. So as you guys can see, like, he's now has only 3 5Ks in his hand, so if we delete him on this next turn, he basically dies. But he used Leopold's skill twice and then calls the Panda, Geograph Giant. So he attacks us and hits a draw trigger and a front trigger, which is really, really swole. And then we just take damage for days. We re-ride, we bind his card, we delete him. And then we bind his 0 as well because we're trying to, like, clear his board. And we attack for 30. And then we attack for 24 and then for 20. And he cannot guard the 20. However, he does 6 damage heal. So that's really good for him. Honestly, in the previous turn, I should have bound the grade 2 so that he wouldn't have had that grade 2 to guard with. But he still would have had the crit, so, you know. But then he attacks with Bison. I do 2 to pass his Bison, and then he attacks my rear guard for some reason. I rewrite again, I bind him, I attack for 40k, and that's just GG for him because he no longer has anything that he can really do in the situation. But anyways, that has been the FutureFight Vanguard for deleters. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like I said in the beginning of the video, be sure to leave a thumbs up on the video. Really helps me know what kind of videos you guys prefer and favor for the future. Comment down below letting me know what you'd like to see in the future and also what you thought of this deck build, or if you're trying out anything new or kind of techie for this deck that you want to mention. Also be sure to subscribe down below. Check out Dabbers, our sponsor, and if you're interested in anime and gaming, check out my second channel, Let's Plays Animes, down in the description below. With that being said, guys, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.